Hello, welcome. Today, I'm going to be talking about training your AI on your design system. And I'm Josh Thomas. Thanks for joining us. I'm a product manager here at Builder, and I'll be guiding you through today's session. And this is a live interactive session. So feel free to drop questions in the Q&A at any time. We'll leave room for Q&A at the end. And the recording of this is going to be shared after the event as well. So let's see what we're going to be covering today. In the agenda, we'll talk about converting React, Vue, and Angular components into AI-readable instructions. We'll then auto-generate real code from your existing Figma files, and then we will apply design updates across apps instantly using component instructions. We'll also accelerate new builds with AI which will understand your design patterns. And at the very end, we have a really interesting proposition for people. And you should stick around because I think it's going to be exciting for some of you. So we live in amazing times, and it's kind of still wild to me that like early last year, I didn't think of AI in the same way that I do now. I thought it was kind of a toy. I didn't grok the concept of how it was going to change over time. And it's wild to me that we can give a prompt to an AI and it will generate an entire application based on that. So I could say, generate a tabbed interface for the user preferences section for a SaaS financial planning app. And it understands enough context from its learning to be able to create that. And I could do it through a prompt or even through a design mockup. But I'll admit that, I was a skeptic, but using this can allow you to create this fully working app in seconds. And I never thought that we'd be able to push software development the way that AI has in the last 6 months to a year. But the truth is as incredible as all of this is, well-tested code is always going to be way better than brand new code. And LLMs love generating new code. That's what they were born to do. They're code generators, right? But let's take a look at some of the code that gets generated. In this case, we're looking at Claude v4. It's created a tab button. And looking at the code, initially I would say, looks good to me, right? This code doesn't look bad. It did exactly what I asked. It created a tab, buttons for the tab, icons. It used React, but if you look closer, it's kind of missing some things. It needs ARIA labels. It needs keyboard navigation, focus management, and none of this is given by default with AI generated code. And a fully fledged design system will have these things baked into it. But this is just a snippet. And there's much more code designed to handle the accessibility errors or other issues that you get from the code that is provided by default from an LLM. And using something like React ARIA, which is what we're looking at here on the right, is a good starting point. But more than likely, you work at a large enterprise that has an existing design system. And enterprises that build their apps internally usually have really mature production-ready component libraries. And this is an example of Audi. And this is a production-ready component library. It's been edge tested. It has all of these different states, all of these different iterations. There's an error state, there's optional hints, there's a currency slider, there's discrete steps, hard limits. And this is just what I could fit in Fold. There's a lot more documentation provided just for this one component. And making use of these components over what LLM can provide you in a one-shot is night and day in what's possible. It's much more likely relying on the design system that you already have is going to create code that is better in the end. And there's an art to ensuring that LLMs know when and how to use your component library. And at Builder, we call this design system intelligence. It's called context engineering. So right now, that's a popular term, context engineering. It's because it's important for LLMs to know just enough to complete the task that they need to do. If you give them too much information, they get confused and they make bad decisions. If you don't give them enough context, they don't know what decisions to make. They'll make things up without actually having an understanding of what you're asking. So whether you're bringing over UI from Figma or doing AI prompting, being able to provide the right context at the right time through design system intelligence is important. And here's an LLM consumable guide for a tab component. So it provides the purpose, when to use it, architecture, interdependencies, related components. And if you can give this context, and obviously there's a lot more information than just what we're showing here on this one slide, but if you can give this context to the LLM at the right time, it's going to do a great job. But anyone who's worked on a large component library, which I'll say I have, or maintained a storybook, you know that this documentation is very tedious. It's hard to keep up to date. And not all organizations are capable of having something like this. But what's exciting is that the documentation we're looking at now, and what I'm going to show a little bit later, is that we were able to generate documentation and code examples using AI. So Builder can now connect to your repo, scan your entire component library, and create detailed design system intelligence in just one command. And with this intelligence in place and strategically provided to LLMs at the right time, you get radically better results that actually use your components properly. I'm going to demo this. First, I want to talk about a little bit about the feature, and design system intelligence is kind of an umbrella term that we use. Specifically today, I'm going to show you the first feature of that, which is called component indexing. This process allows us to run the single command within your design system or component library repo and gather detailed information. First thing we're going to do is actually take a look at this video. And I'm going to say before I hit play on the video is very long. We're not going to watch it all. We're just going to watch a little bit of it and skip through. So it takes a fair amount of time for the first pass of running an indexing of your repo. I've seen it take up to 45 minutes for very large repositories, but for most it takes around 20. And once you have this completed, you can make it available to your team or to other teams in your organization and use the intelligence of the information that comes from it. So subsequent Delta updates are a lot shorter. And typically we would just ask that you add those to your CI process. And we can see as it happens, it found 134 components in this case, and it's going step by step through every component and understanding enough information about those to be able to create context for our LLM to use later on. Let's just keep skipping through, and we can see very close to the end here what actually has taken place. So it's multi-threaded, it's running 8 at a time right now. Cool, and it's done. And we can see that I did it this morning as the example. It found 134 components, and it did so in 37 minutes. Now, this feels like a lot of time to sit here and let it run in the background, but what value are you gathering from this? So let's go ahead and take a look. So I'm going to share my screen. Maybe. It's great. Okay. So we're going to take a look here. So I ran that on Material UI, and we can see that it generated some documentation based on that. And here we see there are 134 different documents that were created from Material UI. And of that, there's accordion actions, accordion details, accordion summary. So I've got some questions here. And of this information, there's specific info on the purpose. So what is an accordion used for? When should you make use of it? What's an architectural decision or component interdependencies that might exist? And this is important information. So you can also see that the files that we looked at for this specific component, there's an accordion classes, accordion context. If we look at accordion actions, we can see even more information about it. And this is valuable documentation for an LLM. To be able to read through all of this, understand how to make use of these components so that whenever it generates code, whether it be in an existing application or a new application, it's able to do so with a high level of understanding. So that's great. We just looked at it for Material UI, but let's look at another well-established design system that was created by Adobe. In this case, we'll look at React Spectrum. So React Spectrum is a design system that was created by Adobe that was open sourced. I went ahead and went through the process of also indexing this. And I believe this took around 36 minutes, very close to what it took for indexing a Material UI. But as we look at this, let's take a look at all of the options, all the concepts. It has different kinds of buttons. It has different collection information, but also I have done an indexing on it. And in this case, we can look at the index and see that I've gathered all that information. And in this case, let's go down and look at the combo box. So combo box is a drop down. That's what I would call it anyway. And you can see in the purpose here, it's a combination of a text input and a drop down list that allows users to filter long lists. And it provides information on when to use it for filtering large data sets, for type ahead search, and architecture decisions around it. What's the coupling? What are the other components that it works with? And this is valuable information for an LLM. And this is valuable information for developers, having this kinds of understanding, whether the documentation has been provided to you or not. All right, so I've got a question here. I'm going to go ahead and answer it. So can we set a storybook or GitHub repo of an existing design system as a reference to Builder.io? Yes. So if you have a repository that has an existing storybook or your existing design system inside of it, you can run repo indexing on that, and it will use all of that information in the resulting documentation that it provides. So I've actually created an example repo here, which is a really vanilla repo. There's really not much to it. It's just some source code. And if we look at it here running, you can see that in the app file, there's literally the word hello in a provider. And this is using the Adobe's React Spectrum. And what I want to do though is actually, let's take a look at it real quick. That's the easiest thing. So we can see that all it does is say hello. But what I want to do is show how this works for design system intelligence by importing a Figma design and then being able to use that within this greenfield application that has no examples. Okay, so I'm going to go over to here. And you can see that I've created a design here. I'm not going to win any awards, I'll admit to it. This is a really just trying to show how you can use this information and pull it over. And I think it's interesting because we can see all the different examples here and all the different properties that are available. And what we'll then be able to see is how that equates into code. So I'm going to do a quick smart export. It's evaluating this. It's going to create a command for me. Great. I'm going to copy that command. We'll go back and run this in my terminal. Okay. And now I've got a prompt and it understands that I'm in my existing project. Now, this is normally in our system where you would say how you want the design to be included into your application. But in this case, you can actually ask questions as well. So I'm going to say, can you provide to me what the plan would be for implementing this design? Okay, so it's going to think a little bit and it's going to look at the context that it's available to it and provide me information on how it plans on implementing that. And we can see that it understands what we're bringing over our combo boxes. And in this case, it's planning on, all right, so it's going to take a look at the design system docs, examine the existing information. And it didn't find it. I think there's a glitch in the system. Let's run that again. Let's just ask it to implement the design. Okay. So while this is running, and we'll see the output from it, question from Roy, which is, did I hear correctly that the analysis is using Claude behind the scenes to identify the component illustrated? So it depends. In this case, Claude v4 is used as an underlying LLM by some of our tech, but that's not all that's happening. So for the component information itself, we actually have a custom process in place for that. It is agentic, so it does a very good job of finding all the documentation. And for the information that's coming out of Figma, that's actually done using a custom setup that we have, using a set of models that are defined for pulling information from Figma. Okay, great. So we can see that it's asking to implement. I'm not sure why it's doing that, but let's be more precise with it this time. This is the fun part of LLMs. Oh, great question. Can this tool be used for public UI libraries that are exported in NPM? Yes. This can be used for open source UI libraries. And one of the examples I showed, it was for Material UI, which is a very common design library that people use. And there we go. Okay, there must have been a glitch somewhere. So it found the design docs that I showed earlier, which is the combo box. So here we can see it's reading the documentation for combo box, which we actually have documented here. And as it reads through that, it's looking at the source directory, looking at all the code within the project itself, and it's going to go through and start writing the code for this based on its understanding of the current project, as well as the design system docs we're providing. So sorry to go back to the idea. Yes, you can do this for public UI libraries. You can do it through NPM. So you can actually provide a path to the NPM package, but I would recommend that you actually clone the repository from GitHub and bring it down and run it on the source code instead of the final result, which is going to be what's distributed. Usually in design libraries, the information that's available in the source repository is of much higher quality and has a lot more context in its awareness of different examples and potential of documentation as well. All right, we can see that it's creating some custom styling here. Okay, looking through the questions. If you have any questions, please ask because I'm going to try to answer them as we go on stream here. Okay, one of the questions was someone who's using Builder UI or Builder IO, sorry, a few weeks ago did a great job with creating the initial design and code behind it. However, the system became more complex. It started to lose context and override existing UI designs. So there's a known issue with some LLMs. I would say that the best way to stop this, what you could do is create a new session and it'll have a completely new understanding of memory. And we try to go through and actually clean that up with the process. But in the case where you're trying to use an existing UI design or a library, a tool like this and being able to provide all that information as context, rather than asking it to understand the context of the design library itself, at runtime is going to create a higher quality. So can we use Builder's NPM package hooked to my LLM API or Cloudify to generate these docs? So that is a no. So we provide this. This is actually zero cost. So we do not charge for running component indexing on a repository. But as that information is used in your code generation, we do expect for you to use our process for that. Yeah, it definitely supports the use of React code and Figma to React. So let's take a look. The LLM is getting a little funky here. And we can see that it's using Combo Box from Adobe Spectrum, and it's using Spectrum Combo Box props as the type and providing some information. And then I believe it's actually wrapping the Combo Box, which is super interesting. So it is making use of the design. It's making some interesting design decisions. Okay, and it looks like the page might be available now. So let's take a look. Great, there we go. So it's not exact. It made some creative license decisions here. But these are combo boxes coming from the Adobe Spectrum library, and we can see it working here, and it's still working as it made changes to the code. And let's just prove that and actually look at the code itself. As it's running, we can see that it used combo box here, custom combo box, and it created a wrapped implementation of combo box. And then if we look at the actual app itself, we can see that it created a component for combo box demo, which actually encapsulates all of those things. Okay, let's go back to the questions. It does actually have support for MCP servers. We don't currently expose those as documentation though. That is something that we provide at runtime during the processing of our own LLM. Great. Okay. So yes, I'm going to accept that. And let's just say that that worked very well. One of the other things we can do is actually, we did Figma to code, but what happens if I just want to make a change itself? So I can actually just run this without passing a URL to it. And we can just run code directly. So if I execute this, it'll ask me what to do. And in this case, let's add a header to the page, just a whatever we want, right? So let's add a header to this page. Okay, now it's thinking. It's going to look at information, make planning on how to approach this. Okay. It says that, let me first examine the current page structure and available header components in the design system. We can see that it read the documentation for the header MDX file, and it read about the heading MDX file. And it's also making use of Flex. And as it reads the app.tsx file, okay, great, it has an understanding. And then it has told us about the changes that it made. And let's take a look at those changes. Cool. All right, there's the heading that it added coming from React Spectrum text. And here we go. We can see the heading that it added to the page. Awesome. Now I've got one more thing that I want to show is that we have a product called Fusion, and Fusion is available as a visual editor. So you can use the visual editor, and I realize some of you may not be developers, so this might be a little more interesting for you. You can make use of Fusion as though you were a designer or a product manager or a project manager or a developer even. So you can run Fusion either on a browser, or you can run it on your local machine. And in this case, I'm going to show it from my local machine. So in order to spin up Fusion, first I just want to, let's stop that server from running. And then I'm going to call npx builder.io latest launch. Okay, cool. So this is Fusion, and we can see that it's connecting, and it sees that my design system is here. Great. Let's go ahead, and I actually just want to get rid of this. So let's go ahead and remove these changes. Cool. We'll be back to 0. Okay. Now what I want to, we can see that it just says hello again. And what I want to do is now import a design. So I went through and I created a design using Claude, asking it to make an image for me. And I asked it to make an image of a passport input form. So let's go ahead, and here's the image that it provided to me. It is an SVG, but Claude created this image, and this looks like a lot of passport forms that I've seen in the past. Let's go ahead and ask it to use this image. And I'm going to say, yes, I want to use a file. Let's upload that. And then I'm going to ask Fusion to say, make this form the web page content. Okay. So now it's reading this information. It's getting an understanding of what is expected. And it is reading files. And you can see that it decided to read our design system documentation as well. And any person working within a builder product in the same space will have access to the same design system documentation. In this case, we see that it's reading text field, form, picker, button, heading, and it's creating that passport application form using our design system. So I didn't need to tell it that. It just understood that based off of some generic design and form that was provided, that the code it's going to create in the end is going to use the system that it already has information about. And that's exactly what we want. And as this is working, I'm going to go ahead and try to answer a few more questions. So that's a good question. I'm not sure if it can be used with React Native projects at this point in time, probably React Native Web, but I know that we are doing some investment on this side. Okay. Sorry. All right, here we go. Okay, look, it made the form. That's great. And it looks pretty close to what my expectations were. And let's take a look at the code. Great. Look at that. Okay. So as we look at the code that it used in order to create that form, it used all the information from my design system. So you could say, as I'm vibe coding and asking it to make something, in this case, I just gave it a picture of a form I liked. It's going to recreate that using the design system that it has knowledge of. In this case, it's Adobe's React Spectrum. Scroll down and look a bit more at the code. You can see the gender options, country options, relationship options, and it is making use of those components as we would expect, and even with placeholders in some of these cases. Perfect. So as you can see, there's many ways to make use of this information. When we talk about design system intelligence, that intelligence crosses a spectrum of use cases. So it can be used by a designer in this case, where you're using Fusion or you're designing a new page. It can be used by a developer within the CLI who's taking an existing Figma design that was provided by a designer and moving that into code. Or you can even use it through the CLI by prompting it and asking it to make code changes. So great question. So what if the component is not available in the design system? What will the AI pick? Will it create the component on its own? I believe that in that case, you would have to be very specific into what you're asking, and you would have to ask it to create a component rather than just a UI. And I believe that when it would create that component, it would do so with the knowledge of your existing design system. But that's a great use case that I actually have not tried yet. Let's see, are there any more questions I can answer right here? So when generating code from Figma, does Builder.io offer support for CSS preprocessors? I actually think we don't have an opinion on that. So it doesn't matter what preprocessor you would use within your project. And I think that's what's important to talk about here is that we're not opinionated on the code that you use so much. Like if you're using Vue, Angular, React, it doesn't really matter to us. And I would say that it would work in almost all of those situations. And again, with CSS preprocessors, SCSS and less have been around for a very long time. So I have no concerns about being able to use those. All right, let's go back to the slides. Okay, some of the outcomes. So we have talked a little bit about, what you can use this for. I think that what's really interesting is this is something that you can get into very quickly. You run a single command on your design system. It stores some information with Builder, and then you can make use of that immediately. So you can put in 30 minutes, one person on your team to run this command across your design system. And whenever you have that complete, it becomes immediately available, and you can make use of that across all of the potential iterations, whether that be vibe coding, whether that be Figma to code, whether any cases where we have a product that will help you, it will work immediately. All right, let's do some more Q&A. So we don't have a fully coded design system. If I export JSON files for each of my components, can I use those to build out components one by one? I would say that is something that you could potentially do. Yes. I think that you could ask it to create those JSON files for you, but a better use might actually be to ask it to create JSX code or TypeScript or TSX. That is much easier because it allows you to have more information in the designs that are exported. JSON doesn't really allow you to encapsulate the interactivity of designs. And doing so with JSX, you can actually get a lot more granularity. So does Builder provide any integration with other AI editors like Cursor or Windsurf? No, we do not. We actually provide this to where you can run it from a CLI or you can use Fusion. And as you can see, there's a lot you can do with Fusion. So I would give that a try. Can I use my own design system and convert code from Figma? Absolutely. That's what I've been talking about most of this time. And I apologize if that wasn't clear. Um, bring your own design system, run the command on your design system, and immediately allow yourself to use that and the rest of your team in order to generate new code or make changes to existing code. And that could be code coming from Figma. It could be based on images like we just saw with Infusion. It could be any number of ways. But what's important is that by running that single command and allowing all of the context to be rolled up and made available, it's then immediately useful to the rest of the team in your org. Yeah, so can Builder describe the design system itself, comment on the design language, or alter in the process? That's a great question because currently we only replicate and show that to you. So you can see the design system documentation that we create, but we don't allow you to edit it. But that is something that we've been asked about. And as a product manager, I would ask why. So if you see the resulting code from this and it doesn't meet your expectations, let me know. I want to jump on a call with you and talk through how we might allow you to alter the documentation and the design language. And if you have a great use case for that and a solid under a reason for making those changes, I would happily entertain doing so. Okay. Indexing and component mapping in Fusion is a powerful tool for translating design system more accurately into a large language model. For teams on the pro plan, how can we get strong results without access to these features? Unfortunately, this feature that I'm talking about today is an enterprise feature. So it is available to those who are using enterprises. I think that if you're on a pro plan and you have documentation, you might try putting that documentation into the repository and it would make use of it. You can also connect to outside repositories with Fusion. So you can connect to maybe your design system repository and it will do a good job. It just will not do as good of a job as what I displayed today. Fusion is available on any plan, not just enterprise. Okay. And I think we're wrapping up here, but I think this is the one slide that I wanted to cover for the end, which is we're offering something that we haven't before. We want to allow people to submit their design systems so that if you're not on an enterprise plan already, that we can do this for you and we'll show you the results. So we're going to turn your design system into AI ready docs. So the first 20 teams that sign up for this, and this is the first we're talking about it. So if you're on this call, you're intrigued by this and you want to see the results for your own design system, sign up. What we're going to do is you'll have full component documentation, clear usage examples, understanding the relationships that an LLM would gather from looking at your design system, and implementation guidance. Also, this AI optimized outputs, it's structured for elements to generate production ready code. So you could even try to take those docs and put them in your own repository and try them there as well. I assume that your team of developers would probably find this very valuable just to read on its own. And it creates these actionable insights. So you'll also have an opportunity to talk to me if that's something you're interested in after listening to me for this time. Submit it. We'll have 20 people we'll choose from, and the first 20 teams that sign up. And after that, we'll reach out to you and hopefully we can jump on a call and talk about your design system and take a look at the documentation that we generate. Okay. I think that's it. I appreciate everyone joining today. It's been a blast, and I appreciate all the questions that were prompted. There were quite a few, which is great. I'm going to try to go ahead and answer some of these questions afterwards. So you might get an email from me, but thank you for your time.